Welcome to the hottest real estate topics on the planet, keeping you up to date with all the creative ways to buy and sell real estate without bank qualifying, so anyone can build real income starting today. Here is another great show with Dealmaker Bill and Pete the Rookie.
All right, here we are at another episode of Flipping Houses for Rookies. Good morning, Peter.
Hello, Bill, and hello, everyone.
Here we go. We're on episode number 355. Damn, Peter, we're almost getting up to your age there, buddy.
Hey, you're right behind me, pal. Yeah.
All right.
Bill likes watching me to see what's going to happen to him in a few years. I better start. I better start exercising, going for walks. Get a doctor. Little things.
Boy,
maybe I should have knee surgery. That'd be fun.
The light really sucks in this room, huh?
Yeah, you're a little dark there.
Yeah. All right.
We'll just say it's your tan.
Yeah. Here's the episode. Here's the name of today's episode is what I meant to say. Unique ways to avoid not paying too much for creative real estate properties. Here is the description. In this single episode, we will cover some unique and unconventional ways to avoid overpaying for creative real estate properties. This direct and easy conversation will include creative finance options, such as seller financing, lease options, subject to, and how we structure them so they are fair to the seller, the buyer, and us, the entrepreneur. In fact, being fair and equitable for all parties is a huge reason we do so good in the industry. But this podcast would not be complete if we did not talk about identifying how not to undervalue properties so you don't lose good deals that will potentially help you retire early in life. Our real-world experience and strategies have helped hundreds before you to make informed decisions and maximize the amount of safe deals you can profit now, monthly, and later. By the end of this episode, you will have a greater understanding of the unique ways we use to avoid overpaying for our creative real estate properties. Just make sure to listen all the way to the end so you can transform your portfolio and your profits. Ta-da.
That was good words.
Yeah. So here we go. Some of the housekeeping type chores. So first of all, thank you everybody for being here. Make sure you subscribe to wherever you're watching us or listening to us so you know when we're on again. Make sure you like us or dislike us based on your feelings of the episode. Make sure you leave us a review. We have lots of reviews. And let us know how we did. I read those and I make adjustments based on your feedback. So that's very important to us. Also, if you would like to join the podcast by asking questions, we record the podcast on a live stream on Thursday mornings, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we've been doing it now for 355 episodes, right, Peter?
Apparently, that's what the number does say. Yeah.
And obviously we've gotten a lot better. Our reviews are like 4.5 reviews or 4.3 because in the beginning we had crappy equipment and the video, the audio wasn't good and we had no idea what we were doing. So,
well, we didn't know what a podcast was when we started.
Exactly. We had to have.
You didn't even know. Of course, I didn't know, but you didn't even know.
I had no idea. My daughters had to educate me.
Yeah, so, I have sons. You got daughters that keep us like in the tech world.
Yeah, so just stay away from those, first 100 episodes. Well, you could go listen, but just realize that.
I think it was maybe the first 25 or 30. It wasn't that bad.
Yeah, but it keeps our reviews down. But whatever, it is what it is. We're not here to be Hollywood and show off and pretend like we're like the kings of the world. We're just sharing our experience, and if you want to hear through that or see through that and listen to what we have to tell you, then you'll win. If you're if you're here judging us by the way we look or by the way we act, then you're in the wrong place. So, anyways, bottom line is this: you can, if you want to be part of the podcast, you can go to any one of the platforms, Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, and wherever they'll allow you to comment or type in stuff. That comes right to my computer while we're broadcasting the live stream. So if you have questions, you can go ahead and ask them there. I prefer you ask them about the podcast because otherwise it gets distracting if we get off topic, and it makes the podcast more difficult for other people to listen to if we're jumping around. So if you do want to do that, you can go to WhatsApp Messenger. We have a group called Let's Talk Real Estate and WhatsApp Messenger. And that's the place where you can ask. There's dozens of, over 100 people in there, actually. It's kind of like a mastermind group. So anyways, you can go there, or you can go to flippinghousesforrookies.com. Top right-hand side of the page is a support ticket, and those tickets come to me. So if you have a question for Peter or myself, just put it there. If you can't find the WhatsApp group, just send me a support ticket, and I will send you the link, and you can tap right in. Okay? All right, so here we go. I'm always glad to get through that whole section. Oh, yeah, by the way, there's always a link in the description of wherever you're watching us or listening to us. There's a link there that will give you tools to help you with whatever we're talking about. Like, for example, today I think I put in there our new calculator. We have a creative real estate calculator. And there's a link in there to grab it for a short period of time for free, so you can see how it works.
You put the calculator there?
Yeah.
Oh, you guys got to check that out. It's nuts.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's really good. 30 years of doing hundreds of deals that you need no experience for. All you got to do is put in 4 or 5 numbers, and it's just like I'm making a deal for you. So,
yeah.
All right, Pete. So let's start off this episode with an odd statement I don't think I've ever made before. Well, I've made it, but I don't know if I've ever said it publicly.
Okay.
Right? But it is an observation.
Hmm.
The only thing a seller will ever let you do wrong is pay too much.
Ouch.
The only thing a seller will ever let you do wrong is pay too much.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I invented this thing called a balanced offer. So let's cover that before we get into the details of how not to overpay for property. How's that sound?
It makes sense. Balance.
Yeah. So let's start off with the balanced offer has 3 parts to it. So the very first part is the seller is asking too much. This is the one we run into the most, especially during COVID.
Yeah.
Now we do a lot of texting. Obviously, we've created our own software called Creative REI Reply, which is becoming insane. It is incredible. I had no idea this software would be where it is right now, and what's coming on the horizon is even more insane. I mean, I'm not trying to promote the software. Well, yes, I am. Why shouldn't I? Right? It's my podcast, my software. Why not talk about it? But
yeah, it's my ball, my glove, my bat.
It's not really what it is. It's just that it's helping so many people because people can come into this thing, and within a week they're doing deals. We put leads into their account. We automatically have a campaign, and we text them. We use spin tax, which means that no 2 messages are usually sent the same. We make sure that we follow all the phone systems, so we don't get banned and shut off. We have all these special tools. Nowadays, we have a virtual assistant that actually that's AI, automatic artificial intelligence, that actually answers the texts and makes appointments for you. So like once you sign up and get everything set up, it's like you just wait for your phone to ding and then you got an appointment saying, hey, somebody's interested in doing a creative real estate deal. Right. And then once you do that, you You get on the phone and you use our calculator, and the calculator tells you which deal is good by a red, yellow, or green light. Obviously, red is no, 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 and green is go, 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 and yellow is adjust, 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 right? So the point is that you figure out which deal you got to do, and then once you figure out what the deal is, you go into our training portal and you download a checklist for that type of deal structure. So if you're going to do like a subject to deal, you just download the checklist and like just follow along, and the seller doesn't know that you've never not done a deal before. It's no different than me coaching you every single day saying, here's what you need to do next.
It's crazy as you're describing that. I'm thinking, I've known you for years now, doing deals and working with you and listening and all the work and scripts and all this work. And all that stuff is your mind in a machine.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
It's really kind of crazy, but all the things, well, that's all the steps you do. It's taken you years to put in sequence, then you do this, then you do that, and you do that, and it's all just sitting there. It's really nuts.
Then when it's time to do the paperwork, you push a button and all the paperwork is generated for you. You don't even do paperwork anymore. It's like if you use the calculator to structure the deal, it takes all the numbers, all the names, the addresses, everything out of the system and puts them on all the proper paperwork, because every deal has different paperwork. And you're going to send it off to the seller. And then the thing that we don't talk enough about is that when you buy a property or acquire a property, like a lease option or a subject to or whatever, we put it into this auto selling machine, and like it's just all you do is just post it on Zillow, post it on apartments.com if you want, on the Facebook, wherever you post it, and you just send it all back to Creative REI Reply, and it does all the work for you. It's like the only thing that you do is you approve people going in the houses because they send you a driver's license. So you approve them to go in, and you approve their applications. And that's it. Everything else is done for you. It's kind of incredible.
It really is.
So,
well, the famous LeGrand says the one thing you should be doing as a business owner is making decisions.
Yep.
So with all that work, all you have to do is decide, make decisions on what you're going to buy and what you're going to sell and to who. But it's like the end of the steps. You don't have to spend all that time at the beginning. Yeah. The sweetest thing you said to me yesterday is the AI is working. Don't text. Don't do anything. Just wait for the appointments and then talk to the sellers.
right.
Great. I'll just sit here and wait for it to come in. Without having to do all that work every day.
Yeah, you don't do all the admin. You don't do the $10 an hour stuff. You do the $500 an hour stuff.
Yeah.
Anyways, back to the podcast. I'm not here to pitch that. But if you did want to see it, just go to Creative Real Estate REI Reply. No, is that right? CreativeREIReply.com. There it is. CreativeREIReply.com. REI Reply.com. Anyways, so back, and the reason I was talking about this is because we were texting a lot of people, and they would text us and say, "Oh, give me $1 million for this house
for my condo."
Yeah, for $180,000 house, or give me $1 million, right?
Yeah.
So that's an extreme of an unbalanced offer. So the seller is asking too much, or is not willing to settle on a reasonable price. In other words, the deal is tipped too much towards the seller with very little regard for the buyer.
Yep.
Now, here's a good indicator. They have no concept, or pretend like they don't know they have a concept, or act like they have no concept of where the money's coming from.
Yeah.
Right? So they're completely numb to the fact that the house needs to get appraised. Right? And that the bank is just not going to lend an extra $50,000 in a house. Now, during COVID, which is the subject to part of the conversation, which don't let me forget, because I don't know if I have it in my notes, but I want to come back to this. But the subject to portion now is the best time ever to do subject to, because I mean we've been doing a lot of our deals. A lot of our deals have been coming from expired listings, because for 2 years, meaning 2021 and 2022, and we're in 2023 now. But in 2021 and 2022, COVID, because, well, let's back up. I'm way off topic here, but inflation means not enough products, too much money.
Yeah.
In other words, you got one house for sale and 20 buyers. So the price
Mhm.
of that house is going up, right?
Yeah.
So that's exactly what happened. And it wasn't because there wasn't enough buyers. It was because nobody had, if you sold their house, nobody had a place to go.
Mm.
I was just talking to somebody yesterday and they were like, yeah, I'd really like to sell my house, but what's the sense? Because if I sell it for $600,000, I got to go pay $650,000 to buy a house. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's what was happening. It wasn't that there wasn't all these other myths about there were shortages and everything. And of course, people having to stay contained in their house and not have disease and die was part of it, but that was just
Mhm.
in the beginning. Anyways, my point is that we had struggled as investors to like get those properties because uh, people were selling them. You heard many stories. Oh, my friend sold their house $50,000 over asking price, and their asking price was 20,000 higher or 50,000 higher than they thought they could get.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the point that I'm trying to make here, and I'm belaboring too much, is this: what happened to all those people that overpaid?
Mm.
Now it's a year or two later, and they're ready to sell, and they're going to try to get back their money. How are they going to do that? Because the numbers have come down and they will continue to go down because that was a peak.
Yeah.
Right. So if they put, so the way that this was happening is the houses, the realtors were selling the houses, or whoever was selling the houses, and they would go beg, borrow, and steal, use all their connections to get the appraiser to really peak the appraisal.
Mm.
And then the buyer would have to add 50,000 of their own cash, or whatever the number was. And people
Yeah.
had a lot of cash during COVID.
Mhm.
And why did a lot of people have a lot of cash during COVID?
Because it was handed to them.
Yeah, I that's what most people say. I agree with that
Yeah.
money was handed, but that wasn't enough to make the country rich.
Yeah.
What made the country rich is we were in our damn house and couldn't spend money.
Yeah, that too.
It's not like we went to the restaurant and spent $200 a week or whatever. You know what I mean? It's not
Vacation,
like,
air flights, all that stuff.
yeah, all the things that we spend money on that we don't realize we spend, like going and get a cup of coffee every day at Starbucks for $5.
That's
You know what
right.
I mean? All that stuff didn't happen. Yeah, we had groceries and stuff, but all those, we didn't go get our car washed, or we didn't buy a new couch, or all the things that we spend our money on, we weren't spending our money on.
Mhm.
And people were just like, I mean, some people did renovations on their houses and stuff, but most
Sure.
people didn't. Right?
I saw that.
So,
I did.
so number one, an unbalanced offer is when the seller's asking too much money, being inconsiderate of how the seller is going to receive the money, how the buyer is going to get the money, right? Like it's just not. It's all for the seller's benefit, nobody else's,
Yeah.
right? Well, then it then brings us to the opposite. I have to sneeze, so hang on.
Yeah.
Oh my
Hey, go
goodness.
go ahead and sneeze. Before you switch, my son just bought a house, and he was overbid by $25,000, but he got the house because the seller didn't think it would appraise.
Right.
People were going crazy, like, it was bid up a lot from where they were asking, but they did it on purpose. 25,000 more than his bid, and he got it because the seller didn't want to take the chance of it being stupid. The bank saying, not giving you that much. So he got the house, moved it, bought it last week.
That's a good point, Peter, because one thing that I have noticed over my 30 years of dabbling or being in real estate, because in the beginning I dabbled, but now I do it. That's all I do. Right. So here's what I've noticed is that the end user, AKA the person that's going to live in the house, right?
Mhm.
The end user is always the least informed.
Yeah.
So it takes the end user 4 to 6 months to catch up to a market, because they won't listen to somebody like us or their friends or their uncle or their grandma.
Mhm.
So they're going to put the house on the market because they're only going to listen to the good stuff. So if somebody said they got 50,000 over, they're going to hear that. They're not going to hear everything else.
Mhm.
So they need to put their house on the market and actually test the market and see. And then when they don't get it, they start to humble.
Yeah.
Which is I made a statement a couple of minutes ago, and I don't know if I finished it, but That's the reason why expired listings at this current time are the best listings, because that's happening right now. We had the whole COVID thing and people overselling, and just like what you just said with your son's seller,
Mhm.
that's what's happening. That's why expired listings, because they put it on the market with the realtor. The realtor doesn't sell it, and they're like, oh, maybe I'm not going to get that. Maybe it's not as fan, and maybe it's maybe, and now they're starting to humble.
Yeah.
Right. So expired listings, which is the first time and only time in my career that expired listings have been so hot.
Yeah.
Won't stay that way forever, but it is that way for a short period of time.
Yeah.
Right. So the opposite of all that spending, doing too much, is number two for a balanced offer is the buyer's offers too low. Right.
Mhm.
Leaving the seller feeling they are getting gypped or not enough out of the transaction. Right. So
Mhm.
please listen to me, because what I'm about to tell you, and I don't mean you, Peter, I'm talking to the listener. Please listen to me, because what I'm about to tell you, I can guarantee you're doing this, especially if you're new, because I coach so many people, and it's almost 100%.
Mhm.
So please make sure that you make these mental shifts in your mind when you're making offers. If not, you will not get deals, or you'll get deals, but you'll get a lot less deals. You'll make more money with them, but they won't. They will. Here's a term. Ready for this, Peter? This is an
Mhm.
odd term.
Yeah.
They'll put golden handcuffs on you.
Wow, never heard that one.
Right? They'll put golden handcuffs on you. So you'll do that one deal and make 50 grand, and then go looking for it again and go 3 years not making a deal.
Mhm.
Right? So here it is. Deep down, every seller has a trigger point that will motivate them to close.
Mhm.
At this stage, they don't feel like they're getting it. In other words, if your offer's too low.
Mhm.
So they're going to say no. Now, here's the magic. And this, please do not take this simplicity as something simple, because this is what's happening.
Yeah.
The seller feels like they have plan B. So if you don't give them what they want, or satisfy them, or trigger that motivation point for them, because they feel like they're getting something they can't get anywhere else, they have plan B in place, and they're just going to switch back to plan B.
Yeah.
Right. And this is freaking huge, because I will often or sometimes say, so if, and this is a key question,
Mhm.
if you don't sell the house to me, what are you going to do? And that question will tell you that they have formulated or adopted plan B. Well, I'm just going to blah, 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 blah. Then you need to either, at that point, you either need to know you need to beat that, or you need to give up.
Mhm.
Right. Now, here's what happens. And I'm not going to spend a tremendous amount of time on this, because this is not part of my script here. But I want you to understand why I say almost 100% of rookies do this.
Yeah.
Okay. They over evaluate. So the house is worth $200,000. Well, I'll comp it at 180, and then do all their numbers from 180.
Hmm.
Or they'll be like, well, it probably needs about $30,000 worth of renovations. I'll use 50,000.
So they're playing it safe.
So what happens is they use their safe numbers, like you're saying. That's correct.
Mhm.
And they drop the offer, because
Yeah.
let's face it, whether it was, I learned it from Ron LeGrand, so I don't know of anybody else doing it. God knows. I mean, I've been to seminars, because I obviously come to Florida, and I've been to seminars because Ron LeGrand is from down here, and I've met people that knew him before he was a big guru, and they claim they taught it to him. So who knows where he got it from, but he is definitely the master at teaching a lot of people. He is a seminar king.
Mhm.
Okay, so whether he invented this stuff or rehashing it, doesn't matter. He taught a lot of people like myself, and one of the things that he teaches and everybody else teaches is there is a pretty house comp.
Mhm.
there is a pretty house comp. We call that after renovated value, ARV,
Yeah.
right? So that's a pretty house comp. In other words, if the house was pretty and it was pristine, what's the most somebody would pay for it,
Right.
right? So that number is the stable datum, and that's the number we're talking about today. Like, what is that number? And we're going to get to that in shortly as soon as we get through this balanced offer thing, because I want you to understand how easy it could be once you understand the balanced offer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're looking for that magic number. Once you get that number, all the math comes off of that,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what I'm saying is if you're going to do $50,000 repairs instead of 30, it changes that number. Or if you're going to knock $20,000 off the price of the house to be conservative,
Mm.
it's going to change that number. And if you do both of them, you're dead.
Yeah.
Because you have to find that sweet spot. You have to find what the seller is willing to do, and you have to find what the buyer is willing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I put the calculator into the link of the description, because the calculator does all that for you. And then I'm going to tell you how you can get a good comp easily, so you can use the calculator.
Mm-hmm.
Is this making sense?
Yeah.
So all this brings us to number 3, which is the balanced offer, right? That's where everyone wins or gets what they want, right? So if you can imagine this one point, I'm going to describe to you, and I have done this on other podcasts, I'm going to describe to you how I imagine this in my mind, like my picture that I look at when I'm doing deals.
Mm-hmm.
You can do the same, and you will start to realize how easy it could be. And you'll start to realize how you need to ask questions, because you're not fishing. You're fishing for a specific fish, a 3-pound bass,
Mm-hmm.
or you're fishing for what are those some tuna fish in the
Mm-hmm.
ocean,
Yeah.
or what is the one with the nose on it?
The swordfish.
Swordfish, yeah. It's a specific thing you're looking for. And once you know that, you can start asking questions or go to places where you know they are.
Mm.
Right? It makes things easier. So my image is like in a nightclub. You go to a nightclub, and most people listening to us have been to a nightclub, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
And you go into the nightclub, and there's these tables that are what, 4.5 feet tall.
Yep.
And they're like 2 feet round.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And there are places, so when you go into a nightclub, you go over to this table and you stand around it, usually stand around it. Some places have chairs, but you stand around it. Or you go into any of these restaurants like Chili's or TGI Fridays, or, and you go into the bar area, and there's tables around these, but the tables are high.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So let's just go back to the nightclub. So you go there and you stand around this table, right? That's your anchor point for the nightclub. So you go off and you dance, you go to the bathroom, you do whatever you're going to do, but you keep coming back to that table. You keep coming back to that table because A, your friends are there, and B, that's where the waitress or waiter will come with the drinks. And oh yeah, that's where you're going to pay for everything. So everything happens on that table.
Yep.
It's like the anchor point or the stable datum of the night
Yep.
in the club. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Besides, you can't stand with your hand, with a drink in one hand and a cigarette in the other hand all night long. You got to put it down somewhere.
Peter's a cigarette. Yeah, you're back in the 70s now.
That's right.
You can't smoke it anymore
Damn.
inside.
So you got one hand free now. Yeah.
Yeah. So my point is everything is done on this table. The table is like the stable point of the night.
Yeah.
So in a transaction, the closing table, aka as we call it, is the stable point of the transaction, right? So it's envision it like this. It's like a high-powered magnet.
Mm.
And all the pieces and parts of the transaction are little pieces of steel. And they're getting attracted to this location. Right?
Yeah.
It pulls everybody and everything to the table like it's the center of gravity of something.
Mm.
Right? So what's going to happen is the way you create this phenomenon that I'm talking about because every one of my closings is like this, and it's very simple. What causes this centrifugal force that pulls all the pieces to a smooth, healthy closing is everyone coming to that table is going to get something.
Mm.
And that's not the trick. That's not the trick. So I want to make sure you get this. So you start with everybody is going to get something.
Yeah.
The trick is they believe it. And they're going to rearrange their lives to get it. They're going to take the day off from work to show up. They're going to get a babysitter. They're going to drive 50 miles. They're going to go from Florida to Connecticut to be there. Right? Because they not only know they're going to get what they want, but they believe it enough that they're willing to try to go get it. They're not 100%. They're never 100% because closings have this connotation that they blow up at the last minute. But if you're smooth throughout your whole transaction, right, they believe they're going to get it and they're going to show up. So you don't have to beg them. You don't have to bribe them. You don't have to do any of that. You just got to promise them this is what you're going to get. And which by the way to build confidence, because a lot of our rookies feel like they don't have confidence. And I found this by accident with Creative REI Replay, believe it or not.
Really?
The way you build confidence is to know what's going to happen next. The way I found this is in Creative REI Replay. I told you one of the things that we have there is we have these checklists for all the different deals. So if you're doing a sandwich lease option transaction, a slot deal, which is wholesaling lease options, you would go over to the customer with the customer next 3 or 4 things you got to do off based on the checklist, even if you just read it to them. And that makes the seller feel confident that you're the right person because you're giving them the details of what's going to happen, and then it happens. Right? So as you're working on a closing, you're telling them, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do this, and then it happens. So the more you go through the deal and the closer you get to the closing, by that time they're certain, oh yeah, it's going to happen.
Yeah, everything's been happening.
They believe you because it's kind of like, it's the old salesman trick. Get them to say yes, 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 and then pop the question and they automatically say yes, which is bullshit, but it's the same concept.
Have you not met my wife? Come on.
Exactly.
But the other part of it is, beside the seller, anytime any of us have something to do, it's like, wait a minute, what do I got to do? And like, wait a minute, which one's first, second, third? And it can drive you nuts not knowing and just swimming in that stuff. So just have a list of things to do is incredible. It's insane. You do this, then you do that. And it's just all that wondering is gone.
Or even just reading the entire thing for the very first time, like reading the entire thing saying that's all there is. Or, I don't know how to do this. And then so there might be 10 things on the list and there's 2 things you don't understand. You go pay attention to those 2 things. The rest you got to cover.
Yeah.
So it's not as confusing. So, confusion is not having stable datums.
Yeah.
Right. So think of like a dust storm or a tornado, right? Like things are flying around. It's confusing because everything's just flying around. There's, the stable datum of the house is going to stay on planet Earth. And it's not going to fly in the air. Houses don't have wings. They're not made to fly. And all of a sudden, the house is flying around. That's an unstable datum.
That's
Houses
not good.
aren't supposed to fly,
Please do not.
Cars are not supposed to fly, but they are,
Yeah.
So you need to pick a point that you could be stable. The stable point is I'm standing here and I can stay here because a tornado, blah, 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 right? So you get one piece of information you could stick to, and then you build all your belief and your your confidence on that one data because you keep adding to it. So this closing table is that. It's the stable datum, and you're going to build your whole transaction around you can build your stable datum around that closing. So Yvette, I'm not sure. She said, how can I start this?
Well, she either means real estate in general or the Creative REI.
Yeah, I would say the best way to start it is Creative REI Replay. That's the best way. I mean, it's a few bucks to get going, but it is a business in a box. It's like having a franchise. So, anyways, let's keep moving. So, hopefully, I answered. Let me know that if I answered that. If not, go to Flipping Houses for Rookies. On the very bottom of the page, there's a free course on the bottom of the page. Go there. Okay. Good. So yeah, just go to creativereireply.com. And the prices are there. So just make sure you watch the webinar because there's a bunch of discounts on the webinar. Or just go to Flipping Houses for Rookies, go to the bottom and sign in, and you can get a bunch of free stuff there. All right. So the last point of this, because I'm belaboring this too much, but I'm not belaboring this because, like I get into these ideas, like from my title and I'm giving you like the theory behind it instead of just giving you, because what happened is we used to just tell you, just go do this and go do that and go this. And people would not take us serious because it was too simple. So nowadays we kind of give you a little theory behind it so you know why you're doing it. It makes more sense, right? So here's the last point on this before I move on, right? So most people think that money is the item. And only money. That's the whole entire realtor system, which is why I pick on it. Because there are a lot of transactions. When you talk to thousands of people, I mean, I lost track of 4,000 or 5,000 people, which was probably 10 years ago. You know what I mean? When you talk to thousands of people, you start to realize that money can't fix everything. Right? And I'm going to give you proof of that right now, Peter. Right? And this is not my saying. I'm just going to pick out a saying. Right?
Yeah.
Money can't buy love.
Well, that's got to be true. The Beatles said so.
Right? That's why I did it. So that's just evidence that money can't buy everything.
Yeah.
Right? Money can't buy happiness. Right? So money doesn't fix everything. Now, I'm not going to belittle it. Money helps, but it doesn't do everything, right?
No, we've been in houses with people where they have problems that it's not the money. They just need something to happen with the house. And they just don't. The money is like, no, just please. This house is driving me nuts. Please, and it's just certain circumstances that happens. You wouldn't believe it. I've seen it. Like, I don't get it, but that happens to people. It's not the money.
So you got to start digging in, and you got to find out what's going on. And let me give you some examples.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to belabor this because I could spend 20 minutes just on this, and I don't want to do that because we need to move along. So, for example, job transfer. And they have to be somewhere in 23 days to get their new salary. I mean, the first time I ever ran into this guy was moving from Southington, Connecticut to Toronto.
Yeah.
He was getting $125,000 a year raise. Right? He wanted out.
So, well, it makes it more important to get to the job, not nickel and dime another couple of grand out of this one. 125 over there, a couple of grand over here, extra, more or less.
That was one of my first rent to owns I did years ago. I mean, he was making like at that point now going to make like almost $400,000 a year, and his wife lived in Toronto, and had support system for the new kids they had.
Yeah.
So he ended up paying me. He gave me a rent to own for 300 and change less than what he was paying. I think he was paying 18 and change, and I paid 15.
Yeah.
Right. That was the first time I learned that. Right. So there you go.
But it was worth it to him. It was worth it to him.
Yeah. Another example would be divorce. Husband and wife are not talking to one another.
Yeah.
And you need to mediate between them. There is no mediator that's going to help the divorce. All you have is, and I'm going to be rude for a second, but merchants of chaos, which is the lawyer. The lawyer makes his money on. My sister paid $20,000 for a divorce because she refused to talk to her ex-husband.
Wow.
Right. And the reason why is because she had transgressions against him and didn't want him to find out. She doesn't know this, but this is my perception of what happened, right? So that's what causes divorces. Divorces is usually somebody did something wrong and they don't want the other person to know it, so they're trying to get out of the marriage. Most often, right? So the lawyer is making all his fees on, and then not talking. Another one is a person's in foreclosure and they stick their head in the sand. Right? They don't know that they can do a loan modification. They think the only solution is just to give the house back to the bank, not knowing how much of a ramification that is later in their life. They don't know that the next 2 years, this is not going to go away. At 5 years, this is just not going to go away. The bank is going to try to get their money. They're good at this. They are going to berate you. They're going to chase you. They're going to attach pay. They're going to call you. They're going to turn your life into misery because that's what they do, right? And then you quickly make this decision because you feel like you're overwhelmed, right? There you go. Which brings us to the whole point of, and I don't want to keep diverting, but remember I told you one time when I make decisions, the first and second decision is the worst.
Yeah, anytime you have a problem, what do I do? Like, well, we'll just borrow the money. Like, no. That might not be we'll just sell it. No. And sometimes it's the fourth, fifth, sixth, or seventh
10,
plan,
12.
and then like, oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, I just keep writing solutions down, and then when I start getting
What
into
if?
double digits is when the real solutions come about.
Good ones, really,
So
really good ones.
definition of solution is problem goes away.
Yeah.
Right. So one more probate.
Mhm.
House needs a lot of repairs, and the siblings don't want to put the money into it. They don't want to deal with it, or they're all out of state and they don't know how to hire a contractor, right? And they don't know what to do. They have the money. They may even want to put the money into it, but they all live out of state. Or there's always the brother-in-law or the sister-in-law that's greedy. I
That
don't want to
doesn't
let
want
her.
to or wants
Yeah,
to.
I don't want her or him to have it. So like screw them. I'm not, there's always that kind of stuff too.
Hey, we had a funny one. We were in a house, and the guy got the house, I think, from the parents, right? And he thought he would renovate it, but he was too busy working, flying here, flying
Right.
there. The girlfriend starts renovating it. She starts getting annoyed. He says, "For the love of God, get this house away from me."
Yeah.
It was just ruining the relationship, and he didn't need the money. But
Right.
like, I don't know which one that is. A little bit of everything. But
Right.
I remember that one with you. That was like the guy would just please take this house, and I learned right there, it's not the money.
Yeah, sometimes it is, but most often it's not. So my
Mhm.
point is money could fix some of these, but there is still more to do once the money is there.
Yeah.
And the seller doesn't want to deal with that portion of it.
Hmm.
So that's what makes us more vulnerable than a realtor, because the only thing a realtor could do is bring money.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So let's get back to square one. How much is the property worth?
Mm.
So here's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And again, don't take this for being too simple, but I've been doing it for 30 years and I've bought hundreds of houses doing this. I do it with my
Mm-hmm.
clients every single week or when I need to, right? Actually, there's two things I do for my clients that they pay me a lot of money for, and it's almost embarrassing to say this.
Yeah.
But it's what I do. So the first thing I do is, and I'm going to explain it to you, but I help them with the comp.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next thing I do is I force them to find the money now, the money monthly, and the money later in their transaction.
Yeah.
Those two things guide their evaluating process strictly and safely.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do I do to find the comp? So, first thing I do is I take the address of the house
Mm-hmm.
and I just type it into Google. The entire address.
Yep.
Street number, street name, city, state, zip code. So there's
Mm-hmm.
no confusion. I don't get the wrong, because I used to not do that. And next thing you know, I'm looking at a house and it's like, I think it's in Connecticut and it's in Tennessee.
Oh, yeah.
Oh shit, I missed that.
You mean there's more than one Main Street in the world?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So when you
Church
do
Street.
that, now Google, when you type something into Google, there's a thing that the page that pops up is called a SERP. A SERP. It's a search engine result page. That's the
Mm-hmm.
page that comes up when you hit enter.
Mm-hmm.
So that search engine result page is going to give you several sites like Zillow, RealQuest, Redfin, Realtor.com, Trulia, HotPads, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you might have to go through one or two pages, but you're going to get those. So here's what I do. I write them down. I know I'm old-fashioned and I still use paper and pencil. God crucify me because I'm doing that. But I write them down. Or I just put them in a calculator.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And what I do is I pick 3 to 5 of them. 5 is the magic number. Right? And I note them down. So if Zillow says 180 and Redfin says 175 and RealQuest says 190, whatever the numbers are. I put all of them into the calculator.
Mm-hmm.
And then I divide by how many numbers. So if I have 5 websites I got the numbers off of, I divide that number by 5. And that gives me the average comp for this house.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I use the average number before to do all my negotiating.
Boy, that's not complicated.
No.
I remember the first time you told me, how am I supposed to know? You type it into Google. I mean, years and years ago, I didn't even know that. A lot of people know that, sure, use a computer, but that's as simple as it is. The numbers are there.
I'm going to come back to this in a minute because I know that the thinker brains are like wigging out. No way, I'm not doing that. I got my own system. Well, they're not buying houses. Mm-hmm. Or if they're buying houses, they're leaving money on the table. They're not buying enough houses. Right? Mm-hmm. So you use the average number to negotiate. If the house is pretty, you're good.
Mm-hmm.
If the house is not pretty, because the seller tells you, well, it needs work, then mm-hmm. I used to use pre-COVID $25 per square foot. Right. Nowadays with COVID, we're using more like $35 per square foot. Now, I'm not going to get into a whole conversation about this because this is a podcast within itself, but there is a difference between these two words, mm-hmm. renovate and remodel.
Okay.
So renovate is remove and replace. Remove and replace the kitchen, cabinets, and the hardware. Mm-hmm. Remove and replace the bathroom, right? Yep. And I'm talking about, like the vanities, the sinks, that kind of stuff. Remodel is when all of a sudden you have to start pulling permits because you're changing walls, you're changing floor plan, you're reconfiguring the house.
Yeah.
Now, when I do remodels, which I don't do anymore because I don't have to do that. When I do remodel, what I do is I take the average cost for a new construction. Let's say it's $100, $120 per square foot, and I divide it in half. So if it's $125, it's $120 per square foot to build a brand new house in your area, then I figure $60 to $65 for a remodel.
Oh, gotcha.
Yep. This is just cursory math, so you don't have to go do this when you're negotiating. Mm-hmm. But for now, if the house needs repairs, just use $35 per square foot and just get a ballpark figure out. None of this matters, and I'm going to explain that to you in a minute. This mm-hmm. is just while you're on the first time on the phone with the seller and you're negotiating.
Yeah, we're not closing yet. We're just starting a conversation.
Right. Now, here's the shocker. Mm-hmm. All of this is done while testing the seller's motivation, like we were just talking about, and willingness to negotiate and sell. Once you agree and sign a non-committal, we call it the memorandum document, you now know your seller's committed because there's a psychological point of them signing that document. Mm-hmm. Document is non-legal. It is just showing you their intention, right? Doesn't mean you're going to close. Doesn't mean you have a deal. It just means that they're going to keep working with you to the next step. Mm-hmm. But there's a psychological point of them signing a document. Like later on, well, you should list it with a realtor. Well, I signed with this other guy. I can't do that.
Right.
And that's what it's doing, right? So here, at this point, you're going to go do your property due diligence. Mm-hmm. This is where you're going to go out and you're going to look at the property or send somebody out to take pictures. This is where you might get a contractor involved. This is also where you might call a realtor and say, can you give me a comp?
Yep.
Or this is where you're going to dig in or have it appraised. Or this is where you're going to dig in and find out the real numbers. Mm-hmm. But you don't do that until after you have a commitment from your seller saying they are motivated and that they are willing to do a subject to deal or a rent to own or a lease option or whatever, which is why in my training, going back to what I told Yvette earlier, if you go to flippinghousesforrookies.com, you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page. I think it's Deal Structuring 101. There's a handful of videos in there, and it shows you how I do all that math and how you would figure out which deal to do when. It shows you a loan to value ratio. It shows you all that stuff, which is that's my claim to fame in the industry is how you do that. Right? Now, here's the magic thing. If you're paying too much, Who cares? All you have is a non-legal memorandum, and you go back to the person and say, hey, you don't say this, but you act like this. Like, hey, dude, you lied. You told me it doesn't need any repairs. There's like no kitchen in the house. I remember one time I went in a house. I think you were with me. We were in Waterbury,
Yeah.
and Waterbury, Connecticut, and we went in the
Yeah.
house, and the kitchen was in the basement because it was an older Italian lady, and that's where she wanted it. And they took the kitchen instead of being on the main floor, like with the dining room and the living room. They made it another room, and they didn't tell me that on the phone. So it's like that interferes. Now the purpose of doing all of this is to figure out how popular your house is going to be when you go to find a buyer. Like how many buyers are going to like it or dislike it. You do not evaluate when you're doing your due diligence on what you like or don't like. You're going to evaluate on what your buyer would like or not like. Like maybe, I remember one time this happened to me. Where I went to look at a house. My wife and I went out for dinner, and I'm like, I want to swing by this. Before we go, I got to swing by and take a look at this house. And she's like, this is a crappy neighborhood. Why would you buy in this neighborhood? And I'm like, there's no vacant houses here, right? So people are buying here. I wouldn't live here, but people would. You know what I mean? Just like where I live, some people wouldn't live there either. You know what I mean? So, anyways, so does this make sense?
Yes, it do.
You're gonna do your due diligence. So if you go to the house and it's not right, you're gonna do what we call in the business retrading or renegotiating. And you're gonna go back to the seller and you'll say, well, I don't know about this, I don't know about that, I don't know about this. As soon as I get done here in a couple minutes before we end off, I'm going to tell you how you can solve this problem and still do this deal even if the seller doesn't agree with you. I'm going to show you how to do that. Right now, if you're negotiating on a terms deal, you need to know how much money to pay monthly. Right? This is a major confusion in the industry, by the way, because we often do rent to owns. I often do rent to owns. I suggest that's how you make money now, money monthly, money later, is you sell on a rent to own or a lease option. Right? You don't sell for just all cash. That's kind of stupid. Right? So, and the reason why I say that is because you might get 20 or 30 grand, but that's it. You got a job. You got to do one every month or 3 a year. Right? You're better off to set it and forget it by putting, getting $800 or $1,000 a month or $500 a month positive cash flow. And after a while, you can retire because you got money coming in. You got more money coming in than what you need. Right? That's the way you retire. So here's what happens with this monthly rental. Most people go to this place that I can't stand, which is called Rentometer.
Oh.
Right? Now, I get this in my support tickets all the time on flipping houses for rookies and in creative REI replay.
Mm-hmm.
Rentometer says it's $1,400. And I'm like, so who cares? And here's it's a mind shift because here's what you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
You need to realize you're selling the house.
Right. You're not renting it.
Yeah.
You're not renting it. You're selling it.
The mentality of your buyer is I am buying this house and you are giving them an opportunity to pay for it until they can get qualified for a mortgage.
Right.
They are not renters. You're not going to fix toilets. You're not cutting the grass. You're not plowing the snow. You're not doing anything except collecting money. Now, when you understand that concept, it's easier for you to explain to your seller what you're doing because what you're doing is you're taking this house and you are the bank. The guy with the gold makes the rules. So you're going to borrow the money from the seller or your private lender or wherever you're going to get the money from, and it's just money to them. You're going to pay them back their rate of return and pay them every month. And then when you put your lease option person in there, your buyer in there, you make the rules.
Mm-hmm.
You tell them what they can and can't do. You decide if they can go in and if they can't, right? Now, let's say, what I do is I actually take whatever I'm selling the house for, say it's $200,000. I don't deduct the deposit money. I just take $200,000. I go into Google and I type in simple mortgage calculator.
Mm-hmm.
I put the dollar amount, the $200,000 into the calculator. The calculator pre-populates the current interest rate.
Yep.
And I put in the taxes and the insurance, and if it has a HOA, I put that in there, and I calculate my payment. And then I add a couple $100 to that number. I mean, I do that because I do $200,000 houses. On a $60,000 house, you might add 100, right?
Mm-hmm.
The point is, I add extra money. Why do I do this? The reason why I do this is because I want my payment to be higher than what the mortgage would be.
Yeah.
The reason why is that motivates them. So if they go get a mortgage, it will reduce their monthly payment, and it motivates them to go get a mortgage.
Right.
Right.
But
So
these numbers are what they're actually going to be paying.
right,
That's why the rent has nothing to do with it.
right. Which is the reason why I use a mortgage amount. I do not use rentometer. California is the worst for that. Oh, I'll buy this $800,000 house and I'll rent it for $2,500. It doesn't make sense. You know, like I don't know, because it's going to cost you $4,000 a month to rent it. So why would you have negative cash flow, right? So when I do it this way, it keeps them motivated.
Yep.
Okay, so it's very important that you know this, right? It's very important that you know this when you're negotiating to your seller. This is how you're going to do it, because you don't want to use the trap is using rentometer or a Zillow estimate for a rent. You're not renting. Unless, of course, you want to go buy a 6-family house or a 60-family house. That's a different business than what I'm teaching you right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay to do that. Those are all different numbers. And those numbers have different variants to them. So just make sure you do that. Okay? Now, the last thing before we go, does that all make sense, Peter?
Oh, total sense. I mean, any landlord should be taking his expenses and adding a couple $100.
Right.
But God knows what people do. And sometimes, I've had talked to a guy who had a $400,000 house, had it free and clear for decades, never paid a dime. He got it for $1 from the family. So what does he care what the rent is? It's all money in his pocket.
Right.
So things like that can skew numbers in the whole system. But
So
it makes sense.
That's right. I was going to go back to subject 2. I don't think we have time to do that. But think of this. Right now, I think interest is 7.2.
Mm-hmm.
If you buy a subject 2 house and take over a mortgage, which, by the way, subject 2 means subject to the original agreement that the seller made with the bank, it's subject to that, and they're paying 2.5% interest. So the payment's $1,400, and now all of a sudden that's 7%. The payment's $1,800. What did that just do for you?
That's what the buyer's going to have to pay. So that's the numbers we're working with coming in, but the money going out is a lower number because we get the right place, right time. Hey, once in a while the break has to fall our way, right?
Exactly.
Take it.
All right. So before we go, too many rookies freeze if they don't know they are negotiating to pay with their buyer's money. They think that when they're negotiating, they're going to have to come up with the monthly payment. They're going to have to do repairs. Excuse me. The biggest adjustment I ever made in my business, in our business, is that I got pissed off at contractors, especially during COVID or right before COVID and right after COVID. And I'm like, F you guys, because first of all, they were charging too much money. And second of all, they were not showing up.
Yeah.
So I decided to sell houses on a handyman special and a rent to own. So I started buying houses that were livable, right? Like the kitchen was good, but it was just dated. I had green kitchen counters and, the spiral, in between they had like the wooden spirals, like the 70s look, green carpets, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I'd buy houses.
Hey, Bill, don't forget pink bathrooms.
Yeah, wallpaper and wood paneling, right? So the point is I would buy those houses because they're livable. And some guy could fix that if he's handy, right? So I started selling the handyman special, give him a little bit of equity, and I would just not do the repairs, right? That was that was probably one of the biggest moves I made in my career. So the last point is, if you're nervous about all this, right, and you don't know how to do all this, you should practice doing a deal. And here's how you do that. And I told you earlier I was going to tell you this, so this is the punchline for today's podcast. Just sign an option agreement with your seller. If you're worried about the repairs, you're worried about the neighborhood, there's something about the deal that just doesn't sit well with you.
Mm.
You're not sure how popular the house is going to be with your buyers. You're not sure of the neighborhood. You're not sure that the sun is too hot, or the yellow line is not painted bright enough on the street, or there's no sidewalks, or the garbage doesn't come on Thursday, whatever your concern is, right?
Hmm.
I'm being mean. Um, what you do is you sign an option agreement. I prefer for 90 days, but you can do it as little as 30 days. And just once you have an option agreement, which an option agreement is the right to sell, but not the obligation. I mean, the right to buy, but not the obligation.
Hmm.
You give somebody $100 for an option agreement and you go practice. Now you have this house and you can go sell it, whatever you agree with the seller, for all cash or for a rent to own, which is a slot deal. You could go practice with this deal.
Yep.
More importantly, it'll help you learn your farm market, the area that you want to do business in, because your buyers will start telling you how much they want to pay for the house, or they want, like, this is how I found out I don't like to do 2 bedrooms because they sit longer.
Mm.
I found out the hard way, because what happened was I bought 2 bedrooms and I had to pay, like, I have a house. I was thinking this morning, I have a house in Cleveland. I've owned it since I think November or December, and it's sitting there vacant at $900 a month.
Ooh.
Right? That's a mistake. Right? And you would think that I don't make mistakes, but I still make mistakes.
It's a 2-bed?
8 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms.
Ooh, that one.
Yeah. So, and I have another house that's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath that I bought at the same time from another person, but I paid $18,000 for an $80,000 house, but it's just sitting there. I put a roof on it for $12,000, and it's just sitting there, and needs paint and all that kind of stuff. So I got 2 houses sitting for 6 months, which is just eating me alive. And I'm watching the bank account go down because it's costing me $1,200-$1,400 a month to have these 2 houses just sitting there. So I know what my problem is. I'm on a sort of a sabbatical right now. So one of the first things I need to do is I need to get another person to run those properties, because the property manager that's doing it for me is doing a shitty job. Anyways, so my point is I don't want you to get stuck like I am right now. I did that because, first of all, I can afford the payments, and second of all, I did it knowing that this might happen, right? So, and it's me and my life that created this, not the houses, right? So I'm willing to just pay the money, right? So,
right, but what's funny about you? In the end, you will fix it, you will sort it out, and you'll make money on it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you just deal with it. You don't see. I wouldn't sleep. Most of our listeners wouldn't sleep. You sleep, and you just go fix it when you get around to it. I'll get around, and you do fine.
Well, the trick is, I remember when I was wholesaling cars, I'd buy 75 cars a month and sell 75 cars a month. I would buy from a dealer that wanted the most amount of money and then sell to a dealer that wanted to pay the least amount of money. Right.
Yeah.
So what I learned was, and I had an old teacher tell me, Billy, here's how it works. If you buy 10 cars, the trick is you're going to lose some money on cars. So just, if you're going to lose money on 3 cars, then just make enough money on the other 7 cars that it overpays for.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not telling you to do that, but in my position, that's what it's like. It's like my portfolio's well enough that it can sustain those 2 properties.
Right. If that was the only property you had, you would have fixed that a long time ago.
I would have not done that.
Yeah. Like if it was me, me, that's the house, I'd be all over it and be done. But that I have the one house, and then try to move on and get more, of course.
So in final, because we have to go, we're a few minutes past the hour.
Yep.
In final, sign an option agreement. Think of it this way: a realtor would list that house and want 6 months to go to try to sell it. You're asking for 90 days.
Yeah.
You're asking for 30 days. It's excellent practice for you, because if you don't sell it, all you do is lose your $100 or $10 or $20, whatever you give for an option consideration deposit, and you learn something, right? You'll learn your area. You'll learn what the buyers want. And maybe by accident, you do a deal. But go test the market, right? Go figure out what the property's worth, so you don't have to worry about overpaying. It's a unique way to avoid paying too much for creative real estate properties.
Yeah.
Is don't buy them. Just control them. Do what Nelson Rockefeller said. You gain wealth or keep wealth by owning nothing but controlling everything.
Yeah.
And that's a perfect way to do it. You're going to control it. You don't have to own anything. And you don't need to be a genius to do this. Just do a couple option deals, learn your area, learn what the buyers want, and all of a sudden you'll become a specialist in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll know what to do. So when you're talking to sellers, oh yeah, by the way, the magic to this is when you do that, you attain a buyer's list. You get all these people on your list. So now when you're talking to your sellers later on, you're like, oh, I have 58 people on my buyer's list that will want a house just like this. Give me a chance to sell it.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think is going to happen? Realtors don't do that. Realtors, you assume they have buyers. They're buyers on the MLS. They don't have an email list with 58 names on it that you can send out an email and somebody will come look at it.
No, they'll have 2 or 3 buyers, and someone else has to come up with them.
Right.
2 or 3. They don't have a lot.
When you do it this way, you don't get bad deals. It's impossible to get a bad deal because you don't own the deal. I mean, if you had a bad deal, you just walk away.
I did that with my the first foreclosure I tried not long ago. Yep. It was really the top of the market as far as how much was owed in the house. This might not work. $100 option.
Right.
Slept
okay,
like
good.
Slept like a baby. Didn't worry. You know me, I'd worry, but there was no problem.
It was awesome.
Yeah, that's what you want to avoid. You don't want to do this and, it's too much worry. You're going to stress out. You do it so you don't stress out.
Right.
Anytime you're in business, you set it up so that you don't lose. You just have all the rules so that you don't have to go over the edge and, go.
You want to know the funniest thing in the world? The funniest thing in the world. I'm going to make this statement as my punchline for today's podcast.
Yeah.
The funniest thing in the world. As adults, we forget about being children.
Mm-hmm.
We forget about when we had to potty train, we had to do it 2 or 3 times before we got it right. We forgot about that first spouse we rolled in the hay with and did it wrong. We forgot about that food that we tasted and didn't like. We forgot about that driving test that we screwed up because we didn't practice enough. As adults, we think that we know it all and we're going to do it the first time.
Yeah, you know what else though? As kids, I'm a teacher. Kids are willing to try stuff and suck at it and just keep going and figuring, when I get older, I'll know how to do it. We think we're older, but we're still kids at some things. Just go do it, learn as you go, and get there. It's fine.
Exactly. So doing option agreements allows you to do that. It allows you to go practice without being committed, and you can do some transactions. Not to mention, you do a couple deals, you go to your private lender and say, well, I've done 4 deals. There's just so many advantages to it.
Yeah.
So just make sure you do that. All right, good.
I like that. Be like a kid. I like that.
Yeah. All right, we're out. Make sure you go into the description of this podcast, wherever you found it, and there's a link in there. Check out our calculator. We talked about Creative REI Reply. You can go to creativereireply.com. Make sure you watch the webinar and get all the discounts. And if you have any questions, just send us a support ticket at flippinghousesforrookies.com. Make sure you subscribe to us and like us and give us some feedback. Okay? So next week, I don't know if I have that done yet. I'm kind of running. Oh, next week is podcast number 356. It's today's rookie-proven new $1 million blueprint in creative real estate.
Okay.
So there you go. So see you next podcast. Thanks for being here. Thanks for all your support. Over and out.
Thanks for tuning in to the hottest real estate topics on the planet with Bill and Pete. If you want to continue learning how to buy and sell real estate without money or credit, head over to flippinghouses.club for some cutting-edge real estate wealth tools. Or contact us at info@flippinghouses.club.